Hi everyone, welcome. I'm out here in my yard, and what I've got in front of me are my composting barrel, as well as this bag here that I consider as my sort of outdoor worm system, my overwinter worm bag. And it's a grow bag that only goes down about this deep. I've got a piece of plywood propped up on a pot so that it's up off the ground. I had creatures coming into this bin and raiding the contents and almost wiping out the entire worm population. And that was when the bag was still resting on the ground. But now that I've got it kind of propped up within this container here, it seems like it's pretty well protected. I haven't seen any more evidence of invaders. My only reason for coming out here today was because it's cold and I want to move this bin, the worm bin that is, to a spot closer to the house to give it a little bit of shelter from the extreme cold coming over the next few days. There's going to be like 4 or 5 days straight when the temperature does not even go above freezing. So before moving it though, I figured I would try to take a peek at how things are inside this bin, but it's kind of getting me worried here when I try to just dig in, and then I end up picking up a chunk of frozen material the size of I don't even know, the size of something pretty good sized, size of a football or bigger. So I would assume that within this frozen material it's almost frozen, and there is a worm right there. And here's some of the food that was most recently added. It was a whole bunch of tomato, and I think tomorrow would actually be 4 weeks since I placed all of this tomato in here. It's been almost 2 weeks since we checked in on this bin, and we were kind of keeping tabs on how those tomatoes were progressing, but it wasn't very exciting, so we kind of lost interest. So I stopped checking in on the container. But the forecast is what worried me a little bit, was that, you know, these little guys might find themselves in conditions that are a little bit too rough, too cold. The sticker, get rid of that. But I'm kind of happy to see that when I reach down to an area where it's not frozen, where it's loose and damp, but luckily not frozen, there are a whole bunch of worms down in here. So they've you know, managed to take shelter from the cold temperatures. But I still felt like maybe if I were to move this container a little bit closer to the house, it might benefit from some of the more warmth coming off the building. Maybe just shelter it from some of the strong winds that are expected with these forecasted cold temperatures too. So you know, I've been told by some of my viewers, or at least one viewer for sure, that I should not be so worried about these little guys, that they're perhaps a little bit more tough than we give them credit for. But still, if I have control over either allowing this to completely freeze through or not, and if that ends up becoming the, you know, make or break deal for the inhabitants of the bin, then I just, you know, would hate to make a miscalculation in here, or an incorrect assumption that these guys are in fact able to keep themselves warm enough, and then end up having the whole thing freeze. I'd rather just, you know, get this thing a little bit closer to the structure, to the house, and I'm hoping that that's going to provide just enough protection to keep these little guys from freezing. I'll get rid of this in a moment. I just also figured I would at this point restore this covering that's meant to keep the moisture in, but at this point maybe it'll help sort of insulate them a little bit too, if in fact they are able to generate their own warmth and protect themselves. But I also thought at this point maybe I can also put on this top, also hopefully aiding in keeping some of the warmth in here. That's maybe, you know, the make or break deal for these little guys. So I'll move this closer to the structure in a moment. I just figured let's take a peek in here too, as long as we're out here. This is just the everyday worm bin. Not worm bin, I always call it a worm bin because there are tons of worms in here. But it's my everyday composting barrel. All the kitchen scraps end up in here. A lot of garden waste too when there is a garden, but it's winter time obviously. So the only stuff going in here is kitchen scraps lately. This bin got a whole bunch of tomatoes too, the same as the worm bag. So we can maybe get a little bit of a better sense of how the tomatoes are doing in here. This is a larger container, so it does feel like there's a larger section here in the middle that's not frozen. And I do see worms in and out of the material, taking advantage of the moisture. So I feel a little less concerned about the worms in this container because it is a larger container. I know there's just material in general shielding them from the harsh cold outside, and there's also big holes on the bottom of the container, so I know that if they need to, they can, you know, dive down and potentially even exit the container if they had to, assuming the ground below is still soft enough for them to penetrate. So either way, I think, you know, I think I'll be okay leaving this one behind. I usually don't take any extra measures to guard this container from the elements. It's just my outdoor compost container, so it'll just stay out here, and I'll be continuing to feed it on a regular basis with stuff from the kitchen. But I'm going to go ahead and move that thing closer to the building where I think it's going to be a little bit safer over the next 3 or 4 days while it's really cold. It's going to just give me a little bit of peace of mind. So I'm not going to keep you around for that. Before I go back to handling that thing, I'm going to give myself a rinse, and then I'll take care of moving that in a moment. But before I go, let me just really quickly say thank you. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to leave me a like. That's always really appreciated. And also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Bye now.